Är det Greta där? Titta! Hej Greta!
Growing up in the 90s, the world seemed like a safe and friendly place. At least to me.
If the story of the 20th century is the triumph of freedom, what will the story of the 21st century be?
2 days after my 8th birthday, the world turned upside down.
Our war against terror is only beginning. The Iraqi regime has something to hide from the civilized world.
We know they have weapons of mass destruction.
The chief UN inspector Hans Blix arrived in Baghdad.
The world wants to have assurances that there are no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq.
When the world was on fire, they called Hans Blix. He's a pacifist, he's an environmentalist, and he's Swedish, like me.
Hur är den här skjortan och tröjan då? Är den okej?
To me, Hans is the end of a generation that believed diplomacy could save the world.
The Commission has not found evidence of weapons of mass destruction.
I must not jump to the conclusion that they exist. Can I prove there is not a mouse in this room? No.
We talked for weeks about war, about diplomacy,
We hold peace and war in our hands.
about the future. Sometimes I was asking the wrong questions.
I don't start a war.
Hej Hans! Hej!
But I was desperate for the right answers.
We are now so powerful that we can create our own reality.
And then the world turned upside down again.
Мною принято решение о проведении специальной военной операции.
And everything we had been talking about became so much more relevant.
The decision of one man to launch a wholly unjustified and brutal invasion of of Ukraine. Iraq. Anyway.
Hello everyone, I'm welcoming you here at the discussions regarding the film BLIX Not Bombs. I'm happy to be here with the director of the film, Greta Stocklassa. Hello Greta.
Hi.
The film we are about to discuss is a documentary about Hans Blix, the former UN diplomat and weapon inspector for the situation in Iraq, but we will go to that in details soon. Right now, we'd like to say that this is a film which was selected to be distributed by the KineDok network, which is a network of community-driven venues that are screening films in several European countries, including Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, Croatia, Romania. And basically, it's based on the idea that everyone can turn your place into a cinema. So if you're interested in documentaries and would like to screen documentaries, you could sign up and start screening films yourselves. If you would like to see BLIX Not Bombs in a venue near you, check the KineDok website and find a place there. If you will not find any place close to you, you can always start one. So that's just a suggestion for you what you could do and how to reach more documentaries. My name is Zdeněk Blaha. I'm a film and script consultant and story producer, and I'm here to discuss this film with Greta because this is really interesting film and the topic which I think is very, very contemporary. But first, Greta is a Czech-Swedish documentary filmmaker. She's an author of numerous short films, including her latest one, which is called Buzz of the Earth, which won a Czech Lion Award for the best short. And her feature debut, Kiruna, The Brand New World, was released in 2019 and traveled across international festivals. It's a story of a small Swedish town which is on the edge of a huge mine, which is actually expanding and cutting down more parts of the city. So this is more about how the inhabitants of the city is actually seeing this progress of the mine. But BLIX Not Bombs, it's something different. This is, as I mentioned, a documentary about Hans Blix, a former UN diplomat and weapon inspector who was part of the committee that were inspecting the presence of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. It's actually not only what he did. He was active politician and diplomat from the 50s, but this is something that made him the most famous. It's a documentary that was released in 2023. It was premiered at Hot Docs, CPH Docs. Later it traveled to Hot Docs in Canada and other festivals, and we'll be discussing this in detail today. If you want to see this film, you could still do it because it's still available for free online at KineDok website till Tuesday midnight, so tomorrow midnight. And as I said, if you were not able to catch it, you could always approach KineDok team and maybe find a place where you could screen the film. So, Greta, hello, welcome. I'm very happy that we can discuss this film.
Hi, nice to see you.
So let's talk about let's say general questions about this film. What brought you to this topic? What brought you to Hans Blix, and how did you find him?
So it was in 2019 when I was still studying at the film school in Prague, and I was looking for a topic to film for my for my school exams. But one topic that I've been interested in for a long time is diplomacy and Swedish neutrality, since I'm half Swedish and Czech. So the moral dilemmas of being a neutral country, for instance, or being a diplomat, meaning being able to talk to both dictators and freedom keepers. So if there is something, if there are some moral dilemmas in that. So I was thinking about that and that topic, and I remembered that since I was a kid, I knew about this figure Hans Blix, or I heard the name Hans Blix from Team America, this satiric film. Where he was ridiculed, but nevertheless, I knew that he was a Swedish diplomat, and I found out that he was still alive, and that now he lived retired in Stockholm. And then I learned a little bit more about him, and I saw that he had this very, very long history of trying to negotiate peace, or peaceful ways since 60s basically. So he's traveled to North Korea and Iran, and he met Gaddafi, and he was so I just in Sweden you have this great thing. You can Google everyone and find out where they live and what's their phone number. So I did that, and I found out he lives in Stockholm, and I called him, and I was lucky because he was very friendly, and he immediately invited me for a coffee or a tea to his place, and we discussed. I didn't know what I wanted the film to be yet, but I knew that I was interested in these topics and that I wanted to discuss them with him. So we decided to start off with a very thorough interview about his work and his life, with a focus on diplomacy. Yeah, that was the origin of it.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned you wanted to make a film about diplomacy, then you found Hans Blix. Was it that at that moment you still considered that maybe interview with Hans will be just one part of the film, or was it quite early clear that maybe to shoot with Hans as a diplomat who was at these crucial events in history would be like the best way to approach it, to have like a portrait of him?
There was a very, very brief thinking about if I would do, but I didn't know how to do that. So that was very brief. I pretty early decided on doing it, filming Hans, because he's the ultimate diplomat.
Yeah.
So I felt like this is he's a case study of diplomacy. Like this, his whole being he's like, it's just, that's the way he is. So it felt interesting to film him. And then, of course, when I got more interested in the Iraq part of his career, I realized that's a very, very interesting in a more global and global way also. So I saw that he brings a lot of these topics genuinely. Yeah. to the table.
But actually, Iraq wasn't the only place where he was involved. He did lots of works during the time you mentioned North Korea. He was also in Chernobyl, right? So there were other events, but in the end, the Iraq was like the optimal or the great topic for the film in sense of like to cover the diplomatic process for you. Was it like that?
Yeah, like you mentioned, he was so one of his, I think he himself doesn't see Iraq as the biggest achievement in his career. He sees the Stockholm Conference from the 70s, which he did, and even the Chernobyl was very specific because he actually managed to make both East and West communicate about the act. This was the first time that during the Cold War that they actually would help or communicate to solve the problem. But no, the Iraq was most interesting because it, first of all, was very, very much broadcasted. So there was a lot of material to it. But it was also when he first became, he became a public figure much more than before. So even people, like even Team America wanted to ridicule him. So and one of the part was because of his ways of being so diplomatic. So being very, well, if you could, what some people would call soft in the means of like trying to find peaceful solutions for problems by negotiation and communication. So yes, so Iraq, and then of course this the more we started talking about it, so we did this long interview about his whole life. But when we started when we were talking about Iraq, there were some more questions I started to have, and I felt that this is a more even more ambivalent topic than I thought, because I always saw him as a very positive figure and a hero. And then, but when we were talking about this period, I almost got a little provoked by him being so like a civil servant, just saying that he was doing his job and he did what was asked of him, and but he didn't do more. So I don't want to spoil the film, but that's also a very big part of the film. When we get into this conflict, that if there was some that for a moment I had a feeling that he could have done more, and I wanted to see if he felt that way, and we were discussing that.
Was it hard to convince him to be in the film? Wasn't he more like reserved? And because we see in the film that he also faces some backlash, like Team America just ridiculed him, but there was many people who were against him. In one moment, he was mentioning that there was a big protest outside of UN, and he was afraid that maybe people will lynch him because what happened. So was he open to do the shooting with you, do the interviews?
Yeah, he was. There was. Yeah, he was immediately very open. I think that's kind of his personality. I think he is a very transparent person. But of course, he's a diplomat, so he's trained in talking and in building the persona he wants to be perceived as. So that was another top task, to find different ways to reach to him, to reach parts of him that haven't been shown, that haven't been shown in interviews with journalists, or more personal in the sense, more personal, like feelings about these situations. And but also he's not perceived like negatively. I think that those protests he wasn't afraid to be lynched. He was afraid he would be dragged up as a mascot, because the protests were on the same side as him. So he was afraid that he would be like a symbol for the protests, which he didn't want to be, which was something I got provoked by. Like, why could have been like the whistleblower or the speak out, but that's not, he felt that that's not his place.
Yeah, I think like the neutrality is kind of very symptomatic to him, to keep neutral, to provide both sides, and like just provide suggestions for solutions, not to say what to do. And we will get to that, because there is also one scene when you actually talk about that. But didn't you afraid that he, as a diplomat, as a person who is trained to speak and to be diplomatic, to know how to talk with you and how to suggest, we see that in the film. He's very open, very friendly, but on the other hand, you see how he responds, how he's carefully selecting the words. Wasn't it hard for you to find a way to get the information out of him, or was it more like if there was a moment when you were afraid that he might be maybe constructing this mask that he has, that to keeping it as a diplomat and not answering the questions you want? Was it hard to get to him this way?
Yeah, that was it was definitely a worry I had, but I think I kind of discovered when that was happening. So we did this first long interview, but then COVID came, so we had a very long break, and we were filming these situations instead when we could film outside, so we wouldn't put him at risk. And then we did another interview a year later. So actually, the film is made out of 2 interviews with a year apart. So and the second interview, I knew I was asking the same questions often, but also I knew I could change slightly, reformulate them to see if he would say it a different way and such. So that was definitely like a hard work, but I hope like other people feel so, but I think we managed to navigate that. I don't feel I made him like what do you call a medallion, like a very glorifying portrait of him. I don't feel like that I don't feel that I sold out to his vision of himself. I feel like I did my portrait of him. But yeah, but that was a way of trying to, because of course it was very often that when I asked a question, he especially in the beginning, he came to this. He was starting. I could hear that he was like quoting himself. That he was so used to these questions, so he started responding as he usually, in like word for word, almost. And sometimes he even said, "As I usually say." And then when he started off a sentence with "as I usually say," I knew that no, that we're not going to use that. So yes, that was a way. And then what we found was that anytime when I was asking very like in a vulgar way, like very simply, like almost as if I was a granddaughter, just asking, "Hey, why did you do that? Like he was an asshole. Why didn't you?" He was responding much more interestingly than if I tried to be like a professional, distinctive, like a journalist who was trying to sound smart. I did that in the beginning and it just sounded stupid because obviously I don't have the munition as someone who is like studied political science and stuff. And that's actually a technique that the late Ika Vehtalahti, he said, I don't know if it was an edit consultant. He mentioned that you should turn your weaknesses into your strengths. And when I was thinking about that really helped me because I felt like I was always couple of steps behind in the sense of I was a kid when those things were happening, and I didn't study political science. I don't know international law. Even if I did a lot of research and I studied about these political topics. I felt like I felt like I wasn't a very good sparring partner in the discussions with BLIX. But when I just embraced that I would be asking a little, maybe sounding stupid, I knew that he was kind and he wouldn't be like, he would try to explain, and even more interestingly. So yeah, so that was a method that we found out that worked best.
Yeah, I think it works very well because it kind of like levels you with the audience because it's diplomacy and this is a very complicated historical event, the whole situation around the invasion to Iraq. And the way that you ask this question very simply, very straightforward in a way, then actually I think it works because I see that he's more open to answer the question. Sometimes, as you mentioned, it's more like he's patiently replying to the granddaughter rather than just a journalist as you were there as a filmmaker. So it seems like first he looks more humane, like the mask of the professional is away, and it feels like he's more like rethinking what he's saying and the way he's saying, because he's not talking to politicians, he's talking to you as a common person. So he has to change the words, and I think that was very well done, because as it's like for me, I understood him better, and he looked more like a kind person, not a politician, not a diplomat, but just a regular person who's just answering the questions. So that worked very well. So great to know that this is the method that you used. But I was also thinking, like, you're both Swedes, you both talk Swedish, but he decided to choose English as the main for the interview. So that also suggests that, as you mentioned, that he maybe want to keep his professional face on and like quote himself and be on this like diplomatic level. So do you feel like the way that you went straight forward to him with like this like simplified question, let's say, was something that maybe turn him off, kind of like maybe surprise him, and then he open up more? Like if you would stay in like, let's say, journalist side, do you think you will not get these answers that you get?
Yes, I think so. Yeah. And I think that of course so I don't want it to sound also like I don't feel it was I don't feel like it was tricking him. It was very genuine, like these questions there I didn't make myself more stupid. I just wasn't like having this filter. Like sometimes, like maybe I was simplifying stuff, but I wasn't like trying to be completely out of. I don't feel like I know some people were like feeling like I was manipulating him with making myself dumber. I am that dumb. That's just the thing I wanted to say.
No,
So yeah, no, but I feel that yeah, so there was a change even when we were like you mentioned, he decided to speak English, which was also like a first sign of that he this is his narrative. So we decided pretty early on that these more civil situations, because I wanted the interview to be intervene with situations from his life. I decided that those would be in Swedish. And that came also pretty genuinely, because when we were having breaks, when we didn't film, we were speaking Swedish. So yeah, but in the film, it became like a counterpart. I think that he opens up a little more in those, or like when he speaks Swedish later. That's like the civil side. You have the professional side that's English, and then you have the civil side that is Swedish.
Yeah, I think it worked very well. I mean, I don't think your questions are stupid. I think you just ask straight the way that me will ask, or someone else who just saw the film and it's not journalist, it's not politician will ask. And you basically brought him to our level as audience in a general sense. So I think that worked very well. And these moments when you see the everyday life, when you go shopping with him to buy the groceries, and he's there talking with his wife about the news and everything. These moments in Swedish actually work very well, because for me it was more like not an official documentary on politics, but more like a very civil, very human way of portraying him and his thoughts, and actually making him more like sympathetic, more like charismatic to us, to viewers. So I felt much more connection to him, because he was more human, more personal than just a politician, a figure, a professional, a diplomat. So that's something that really works well for this film.
That's great. Because I just one last thing to that, because I remember even when we were doing one workshop or something, they showed us like these funny statistics of like different topics that for different audiences. So, and these like political documentaries about diplomats and stuff, that's like the demographic of the people interested in that is usually like middle-aged men. which is like basically the opposite of me. So I was like, but I am interested in politics, and I know a lot of girls who are interested in politics and in global issues or in moral issues and stuff. So I wanted to make a film that is approachable to people who are interested in politics, but it was something I was lacking when I was watching political documentaries. I was lacking humor, and I was lacking like intimacy, or like seeing like um a plastic, or like what to say, yeah, like see the characters three-dimensionally. It was usually just like one, like, yeah, Dick Cheney is Dick Cheney, and this one is this one, or Rumsfeld is Rumsfeld, and but you don't see who they are as persons. So that's I'm glad that worked, because that was an aim of that.
Yeah. If I'm correct, that this is also reflected in the way how we use the archive materials, right? Because I read somewhere that you tend to use materials that were not shown in media that much, and rather look for these like human moments, like when someone is, let's say, adjusting the microphone, or like doing like off-camera kind of situations that will not be used by media houses, but for the community, it's great. Is that so? How you work with the archive materials in this way?
Yeah, that's also, it was really fun in the last part when so it was very difficult in the beginning how to start off with the archives, there was the first time I did a film, and because it very easily comes to, you just illustrate what is being said, and that's like the most boring thing if you don't use it intentionally some way. So we both use these like iconic pictures that we saw, that we all know, but usually when you look in those banks like AP or Reuters, you have the full clips, and you see what was before and after, and that was very interesting. It was like you could see like how they were waiting for the broadcast, or exactly like they were adjusting something, or someone was just moving some there, or you could hear like the original sound that you don't usually hear. So when Hans is coming to the UN, and there are these reporters like filming him, and they're going backwards, and he actually says like, "Watch out so you don't fall." And you wouldn't have heard that in the news, because that would have been a voiceover of it, something. So we were looking for these like more human parts, and also I think great work that was with Alan Sees, the editor. We were doing this, we were like finding these details, and then I think great work was the sound designer Pavelian, who was working on the film, because he usually when you have archives, they don't have sound, or like they have only the microphone when someone is speaking, but you don't have the soundscape or like the atmospheres and stuff. So he was actually doing all these sounds. I don't know how you say that in ruche.
Follies. Yeah.
Follies, yeah, right, of course. So he was doing all these, and so he was recording it, and then also they also became much more alive, because he could hear the paper rattling, or hear the footsteps and everything, and that I think that helped a lot too.
Yeah, it's like very like lively. The footage feels like a bit different, like more like a dramatic, let's say, for this content. Although the situations are, I would say, tackled more like a less dramatic way, because we know these images. It was very like explosive times, but the film is very like down to earth in this way, and not like pushing the, let's say, dramatic effect, but rather than just the information, the facts. So how hard it was to like go through this archive and decide which will be there? Like, I mean, how many of material was there? Because you said there are 2 interviews with Hans, but the rest is the archive. So was it difficult to go through that? How long you were looking for these archives? Was it like the major part of the film in the end?
It was very difficult. We were editing, I think, for 1.5 years, basically. So the film had very different shapes. Like at one point, it was even like very more of a biopic of his whole life and stuff. But this archive, I think our like work, work process was that we wrote down what we wanted to be there, and then we were looking ourselves, and then if we couldn't find that, like first we made like a skeleton or like a narration, like an arc, but then it was interesting. It was very interesting. I really like working with archives now because you had to detach them from the meaning. So you were just like, oh, you were starting to edit as if you were using your own material, and you were thinking, okay, here I would really need like a counter look. So you go into the archive and you found it from a completely different time or something. So even his speeches, we weren't very like we were mixing the times of the speeches, for instance. We were, because he looked better in this one. And so we were using the material more freely, and that was very fun. Yeah, but it was difficult and it took very long time. And we had a researcher like who was then, when we knew what we wanted, she was looking for the exact clips, for instance.
Mhm. I like the way that you used materials that are, as you mentioned, like not usually in the news coverage, and it's totally new and different. But they're also the famous scenes, the archives that we all knew from the news. I mean, for example, the journalist throwing shoes on Bush, which was also like seen a lot, or I especially like the George W. Bush's Freudian slip when he's talking about invasion to Iraq instead of Ukraine. That was very nice touch and put everything in different context. So it was really great work with the archives. But let's go to the topic. So you decided to structure the film around the invasion to Iraq because that was, although Hans doesn't think that this was his like greatest work, but it was very important in a way that how, as you mentioned, he was placed in the center of attention. And in the film, you're mentioning that you were 8 years at the time. That was something new for you. You knew that something big is happening, but didn't grasp all the details. How this film actually changed your memories of it? How to reshape it when you were digging into the topic? What new you learned about it? Did it change somehow something the way how you perceive it now?
Yes, I think it changed in the sense of showing me even that these events were even more important than I even felt like they were. So I was, when we were making the film, I was very worried that that would end up as a film about a war that was 20 years ago. That is not to sound like vulgar, but like irrelevant now for today's. But I feel like it's not. I feel like I'm still amazed how every day there's things happening that I come to think about the film very often. Like, but this is like what he said, or this is very similar to what was happening. So I think it changed my perspective on. I think it very much changed my perspective on the US from being I think especially in Czech Republic, you have this very, or for a long time, you had this very idealistic picture of the United States as a symbol of freedom and democracy. And I think it's a generation of people still are very reluctant to being critical and just agree with anything the US does. I think it's changing now with Trump. But for a long time, so Czech Republic was very pro the invasion. I think it was one of the like few who were pro the invasion, or like so. So yeah, so it's changed. It had changed, and yeah, and like the world dynamics, like it's much. I see it's much more complicated than I thought it was, I guess.
Yeah. And how do you see the situation now in the US, like the politics of Donald Trump and his administration, and especially in case of Venezuela, doesn't seem familiar to you after this film?
Yeah, so I have to mention that I have since that, so I have a kid, and since I gave birth, I think I got more detached from this. I feel like I don't want to follow world politics as much as I did before. So I'm isolating myself a lot. But of course I know about this. So yeah, so about Maduro, like the Venezuelan president, I think that's like that's like so ridiculously copy pasted. Or like so it's even more. It's like it's like back then it was at least like trying to pretending there is like a greater good behind this. But now it seems like just like I think that it has changed in that there is no facade anymore. Like Trump is not like the Democrats before, like the Clinton administrations. These like old American political or politicians like we used to know. Even Bush was like they knew they were not doing something good, but they were trying to mask it as something good. But I think Trump is just like, I don't know, après moi la deluge. Like, so now we just do whatever we want.
Yeah, I agree. Like when I saw the film recently again, and I was just so surprised that it's really, as you said, copy paste. It's like they just went like one point after another the same way, but they didn't even try to like get the approval of the international society, like the United Nations. They just went there and didn't care, and it's kind of scary. So, do you feel like we are seeing a decline of diplomacy, or at least this type of diplomacy, or?
Yes, absolutely. Like, unfortunately, yes, I feel that it's as much as I wouldn't like it to be, because I think it was a very good like mechanism that was working, like UN and all this. But I think that the narrative that is in the world now is just like a very simple one, like if you're strong, you can do whatever you want. Um, and yeah, so I think I think it's a new era. I think we're living well, it feels like I may be wrong, but it feels like we're living in a times when it's completely restructuring. It's interesting and it's very scary. It is indeed.
Yeah, I can relate to what you said about trying to detach yourself from the current events. As a father, I have very similar thoughts as well. But did the film in a way then change your faith in international organizations? Do you think there is still place for United Nations, or is it something that is becoming more and more obsolete now?
So that has changed even since, like, even when we finished the film, I think it's still, I still had pretty much faith. And now, but I think the world has since then, so we finished the film 2023, so it's 3 years now almost. The world has changed exponentially. Like it's every year, I think it's just like so much further away from where it was the year before. So I think yeah, I feel like now it goes more to these polarized more autocracies again, from being like a peaceful world community. I think it's going to be more polarized and like, yeah, so diplomacy being a little obsolete, yeah, being more strength driven narrative.
So from this point of view, like if we see like the world is increasingly impatient with diplomacy, what does BLIX represent today from your point of view? Is he a warning? Is he a role model, or just a relic of past?
I think he could be seen as I think he is a role model in a way, because I think even though I have so I really want to stress that I don't know things. Yeah. So I'm not I'm just saying I'm just a filmmaker, and I didn't study political science, or I basically said I don't read the news anymore. So I just take it with a pinch of salt. I think that he will be like a relic in the sense that it showing a very specific era after the Second World War, very long period of peace, basically. If you yeah, but worldwide, yeah, basically peace, um, and um, and a new way of like, yeah, and this diplomatic ways. I think he's like a man of the 21st century. No, 20th century. That's what I want to say.
Okay.
A man of 20th century, because 21st century is, I think that's different again. So he would be like a man of the 20th century, and but I think everyone could see, like, I'm trying to think about him, or like I come to think about a lot of things he said when I get upset about, for instance, even in small things like conflicts with people I don't like. I get so mad. How can anyone feel that? How can anyone be questioning if that Russia is the aggressor, for instance? But then I feel like I come to think about him, and I'm trying to like get into this. What he was mentioning, this systematic empathy or strategic empathy. I don't remember. Systematic empathy. When you're trying to, you don't get driven by your emotions as much, and you're trying to see the context of the things, because you can be empathetical still with one part, or sympathetic with one part, but trying to understand the context. And I think that's a good thing to do, especially because now it's very easily come to fast conclusions, or we get very driven by emotions. We read something and we read just the headline, or we read just something someone reposts on Instagram, and we immediately, it has become like an imperative to have an opinion. It feels like it's more important to have an opinion than to know facts. So I think people are very lazy in finding information, and they just get driven by their the algorithm they are in social media. So they get fed with what they want to hear, and I think that's very dangerous. And I think he is the reminder of being careful with that, because he always wants to know the other side, and he wants to be objective and find facts, and he is able to talk to the other side, which is something that it's very difficult now, and a lot of people are not able to. So, and I think that's important. Yes.
Yeah, and we see that in your film, that when Colin Powell and Donald Rumsfeld are talking about what you clearly see that they want to invade Iraq. They are decided. So Hans didn't find any weapons, and his team, they didn't find any weapons. So they just fabricating things to just justify the invasion. So as you said, like what they want to believe, just strengthening the ideas they want to hear, and just go in this way and disregarding any facts. That's very dangerous. And you're right, it's just more exemplified by the social media. It's more like making stronger that way. So when I look at like Hans' story and his like all positions in Iraq invasion, I was thinking if it's more like if the film is more like a story of a failure, or a story of kind of like integrity, of Hans' integrity to standing there saying like, yeah, we need the facts, we need to see the facts and be that, or it's more like a tragedy of being right in like the wrong historical moment, kind of.
So far, Ulmerich has not found any such weapons, only a small number of empty chemical munitions, which should have been declared and destroyed. Another matter, and one of great significance, is that many proscribed weapons and items are not accounted for. I explained to the Security Council that unaccounted for doesn't mean that something exists. It may exist or it may not. It's unaccounted for.
What do you think? It's like this? I think for me, it's like somewhere in between.
Yeah, it's interesting you put it in there. I think it's everything is in there. Yes. I think everyone can look. I think that also comes to how what your values are, how you look at it. I think everyone finds a different perspective. I think someone can see it as a failure. Someone will see it as just the tragedy of today. So I think it brings all of these. Absolutely.
There is one scene in the film that you are trying to find out like what he would do and what he wanted to do, and if there was something that he could do more. Do you think like there was something that he could do more in the situation, or because it's a very heated scene? Maybe we will put it there. So do you think he could do more in that situation?
So that's different. That's also that's a little like the question you said before. Which one of these three? Like how do you see it? So what does it mean to do more? yes, so there are these. He could either jump up on the table and start shouting, "You're doing something illegal! I won't stand here," or join the protest outside. Maybe stopping the US, maybe just ridiculing himself, but surely making an overstep from what his job was, because he would be considered as probably as how do you say, he wouldn't be considered as not relevant. What's the word? I lost the word. Objective, for instance. So he would delegitimize him, I think.
Mhm.
But he could maybe have stopped the war. So yeah, that's also like, what if? I don't know. But it's more of that. I wanted to bring the question to the table because I think I was asking myself that. I think a lot of people, when they were watching, were asking themselves that. But I think it's also important to show how he responds, that exactly, like, of course, maybe he could have done that, but that's not who he was. If, like, I would have, maybe me as Greta, maybe I would be like, I would stand up there and start shouting. But at the same time, I would have never been elected for that position exactly because of that reason, because they knew I would stand up. So the reason that he even was able to do this job, why everyone agreed on him, was because they knew that he would be objective and civil, and he wouldn't do these.
Well, I think we all hope that the war will be very short and that the truth will come out about whether Iraq has weapons of mass destruction or not.
When people look back on this time and look back on this conflict, I honestly believe they will see this as one of the defining moments of our century.
By the end of June, everybody knew our reports were being correct.
The intelligence service believed that there were WMD. It turns out we were all wrong, probably in my judgment, and that is most disturbing.
Well, he was wrong. We were not wrong. And the whole world realized that the chief ground upon which they had invaded, not perhaps the real ground, but the ground that they advanced to the world public, was erroneous altogether.
The main reason we went into Iraq at the time was we thought he had weapons of mass destruction. It turns out he didn't.
It appears that there were not weapons of mass destruction there.
You said you knew where they were.
I did not. I said I knew where suspect sites were, and
You said you knew where they were, near Tikrit, near Baghdad, and northeast, south, and west of there. Those are your words.
In 2003, my friends are dead. You killed people. You lied. You lied about WMD. A million Iraqis are dead because you lied. My friends are dead because you lied. You need to apologize.
But still, 19 years afterwards, Iraq is still in a mess.
What would the alternative have been?
If they had not invaded, well, Saddam would have remained in power. That would have been pretty horrible too. How long? We don't know. I mean, biology has a solution for all of us, including Saddam Hussein. And I think that what we have had since then is worse than having Saddam in power.
But since you know all this, do you have any remorse?
Remorse?
Yeah?
Sorry about what happened? Or what? Sorry about we did?
Yeah?
No.
Do you feel like you should have done something differently?
No, I don't think I could.
But couldn't you have said that there are no weapons, that this is not right, that they shouldn't invade?
No, I couldn't try to say that this is wrong. I could not say at the moment there is nothing, because to prove the negative is almost impossible in most situations. We cannot prove there is nothing. If I say, can I prove there is not a mouse in this room? No, I cannot prove it. It's very unlikely, but I cannot prove it. But the most thing I could do for a peaceful solution was to stick to my job. And that was undermining a main argument that they came forward for the invasion. Could you ask more of me? Could you ask me and say, BLIX, stand up like a preacher and say, you United States, don't do that.
I'm just asking because I'm often coming back to how would I have acted?
Yeah.
Maybe, do you think it's a...
Well, maybe you would have gone to the Security Council and said that, look here, you are thinking of invasion. I just want to remind you that the Charter of the UN does not allow you to do that. And what will happen then in the Security Council? We'll say that, Greta, who are you to tell us that? Don't you think we have read the Charter? And have we asked you to pronounce yourself about this?
So it's I think it's impossible to answer that, like whether he could have or could not. I think it's more, I think just the polemic around it is important and interesting.
Yeah, I think it goes back to me as an audience to decide on my own, like what I could do, because this is something that I think like many people are asking in these days, seeing the events, like what we could do, like there's a rise of fascism across the globe, what we all could do as individuals. And I think that's also important to open up to see that we are actually not powerless and we can do something, but it's just the roles that we play. Everyone has a different one.
Yes.
I think there is also, as you mentioned, that he's kind of like civil servant, and he sees it this way, that he's diplomatic, he's not taking like stands. It's very visible in that scene when you're discussing the children, and if you should have children. Like he's not saying that you should have 2 kids, but he's just suggesting, and then it's up to you to decide. So it's about just like individual decisions in the end. So that's very nice scene.
Yes. Yeah. That's that pretty much summarizes how he is, I think. I can imagine, I don't know how he is as a dad or a granddad, but I can imagine it was like that he's not there to tell you what to do. He's there to give you the facts so that you can decide for yourself.
And so how is Hans today? Because he, despite his like high age, he's 97, if I'm correct.
I think he's 97.
He's like very vital, and he was working on his book in the film. Is the book released already, or?
Yes, that book is released. It's called A Farewell to Wars. And now he's working on he's going to publish his diaries, his political diaries from the Iraq period. So that's something that I'm very interested in too, because I haven't. He let me look into them because we are using these calendars of his in the film, because he keeps these calendars since, I don't know, the year 45 or something. Like he has the same calendar every year, and we were using them because he was really, even graphically, he was like really writing the White House meeting and he had back to Iraq and stuff, but even like personal things. So, but then he was also writing these political diaries, which were like long letters that he was sending, he was emailing, or he was writing his son. So when he was in the US, he was writing to his son in Sweden, I think. And those are more, he didn't want us to use those in the film, because I think in those he was more, he was less diplomatic.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to see some of them, like just like read them, and yeah, I'm looking forward to what they're gonna publish. So yeah, but otherwise I haven't talked to him. Now I actually feel like I really want to write him, because I haven't talked to him. We write emails. I think I saw him this summer, or like in June last time. I went to visit, but otherwise we don't meet often. But we're in touch a little bit. Yes.
And what were his thoughts about the film? The way how he's portrayed there? Was he like happy, or was he like has some complaints about it, or how he saw the film?
So I think he saw the film like 5 or 6 times. So when we sent it to him, he wrote like a really long email back with like all the things he would have done differently. But at the same time, he didn't say that we should change them. He was just like, I would have done this. But there were some things that he wanted to change, and that we had to like have a Skype call and we negotiated. And in the end, we did some compromises, but we didn't take out anything from the film. We just changed the order of some scenes, which I felt was like that's okay. That's something I'm okay with, because I wouldn't like to delete something because he doesn't want to look bad or something. So, but I think I think he's happy that there was a film made about him.
Does it fit in his like how is it? There's a Swedish word for that, the death cleaning, right?
Yes, yeah, dödstädning. So it's like death cleaning. It's like this preparing yourself that you will pass away. So you get rid of things, maybe mostly material things. You get rid of material things so that your relatives won't have to deal with that. I think it's a very pragmatic way of looking at death. And yeah, but it has become a thing in Sweden, I guess. But also it could be considered as you could look at the death cleaning even in a more metaphorical way, like in the immaterial things. And that's also, to me, I don't know if he saw it, but I saw that this film could be like a death cleaning in that sense too, that he has the opportunity to really put his cards on the table and say what he wanted to be said, for instance. Yeah.
Wait. Yeah, so I think like we are reaching the end of this discussion. So do you have some like last words, wrapping up words for this? Well, maybe I can ask the provocative question, like, can diplomacy still save the world?
I don't know, man. I wish it could. I'm not sure. No, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think we all could wish on that, and let's hope that it's still not dead in this way.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Greta, for this discussion, and I'll be happy to see your new films. I hope you're working on something new, and we will be seeing it maybe in KineDok again next time.
Yes. Okay, thank you for the nice questions.
Thank you very much for nice answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, bye.